Imagine I have this really important insight. I want to share it, and I need to talk to an executive level leader. They are extremely busy. Their attention span is probably shorter than anyone else. I'd be tempted to create a short summary, like 2 or 3 lines that start from the problem in one line and then provide the solution as a second line. Would that work? Yes, no, and what can we do to sort of hook them up and get them to care?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why a lot of executives expect to have executive summaries is because, I think we've done a poor job in communicating insights in the past. We've done the data dump approach. And so executives are like, are you kidding me? I have to find the insight and everything. No, give me the executive summary, right? And so now we have this executive summary approach. Now, the reason why sometimes I react to this is that if we think of a data story, or we think of just a story, and I use this example in the book, what are we doing with an executive summary? We're jumping, we're just taking the climax or the insight of the story and giving that to somebody and saying, here's what you need, do with it what you please. And if we think of a movie like Empire Strikes Back, okay, and spoiler alert, I'm going to spoil the movie for you. But I figure if you haven't seen it by now, you probably don't care. But anyways, what is the major climax of that story? It's when Luke Skywalker learns that Darth Vader is his father. That's it. So I've just taken that whole movie and summarized it down to the climax moment and given you the executive summary. Now, does that have the same power with you as a story as the entire watching the movie? No, it doesn't.
No.
It's efficient, but it's not effective. And I think that's part of the reason what I want to see is organizations using stories, especially when, there's that, and let me give an overview of my view of how a story should be structured. And then I'll and then I'll come back to a modification that I think can work in those situations where we have an executive who just wants the insight. But let me tell you how a story should be told. And so So this comes from me looking at how people think of storytelling. And most of us have heard, stories have a beginning, middle, and end. And that comes to us from Aristotle more than 2,300 years ago. When he looked at Greek tragedies, he observed that they had this 3-act structure where basically the way he looked at it was there's some kind of event where a knot is tied. So there's a problem, there's a conflict or something, a knot is tied. And then the back end of the story is untying that knot and kind of the resolution of everything. So for me, I started with that definition. I was like, it just doesn't work for me because a report has a beginning, middle, and end. And I don't think of many reports as stories. So I kept looking, and then I came across a guy by the name of Gustav Freytag, and he was a German playwright who studied Shakespearean plays. He looked at Greek tragedies as well. And he kind of identified what he called kind of a story arc, or the Freytag pyramid. Very similar to Aristotle's, but just a little bit more defined. And I found that was perfect for what I wanted to do from a business perspective with data storytelling. And so I call it the data storytelling arc. And it starts with, in a traditional story, you have the exposition, which is basically establishing the characters, the setting, the scene, and kind of introducing the beginning of the story. Well, we're doing the same thing in a data story. We're establishing the setting and a hook. And so in a data story, what we'll do is we'll establish what's the status quo. What typical patterns do we see in this data? What data are we looking at? What time frame? We're basically introducing, this is what we expect to see. And then we have our hook, which a hook is kind of like the inciting incident of a story where something major happens to the character. Well, in this case, our hook could be that a metric increased significantly or decreased significantly. Something memorable, a key observation happened in the data that was interesting or unusual. And then that gets the audience curious. It's our hook into the rest of the story. Hey, we saw this, we saw revenue increased 43% last quarter. We don't know why. Oh, okay, well, let's dive into that. And then what we start to do is we we start to peel the layers of the onion, right? So we start to dig into, well, what may have increased, that revenue that quarter? What were the contributing factors? And we start to look at it from different product categories, and we see, oh, wow, well, we had a massive increase in this one product category. We dig, and then we build up to our aha moment. And our aha moment is our insight, our major insight, that we talked about at the beginning of the set. This is the big insight that, oh my gosh, we've completely missed this target market, and it's worth millions of dollars, and we didn't know about it. And so unexpectedly, we shifted our understanding. We didn't think there was any money in this market, but there is. And so now, what do we do about that? So we've gone from the hook, we've built up to the aha moment, and we're not done with our data story there, because again, going back to my emphasis on taking action, we want to make sure that we do something with that insight. And so that may mean that we need to flush out, we may need to perform other analysis on the options. Okay, well, there's 3 options. We've analyzed the cons and pros of each, or this is a $2.4 million opportunity. This is a $1.1 million opportunity, and this is a $900 million or $900,000, whatever it is. But we flush it out, and we help the decision makers to come to a conclusion and establish next steps. So that's kind of the arc that I take people on. Now, going back to the original question about what do we do with somebody who just wants the insights? Well, what I do is I take from that data storytelling arc, I take the hook and I take the aha moment, and I put those into what I call a data trailer. So think of the world's worst movie trailer, where you're giving away the climax of the movie. That's what we're doing with the data trailer. We're giving away, that there's this big opportunity, and we saw that there was a big increase in revenue at this point. We've got our hook. That's what we share with the executive who just wants the insights. And our goal is not to stop there. Our goal is not to just give that. Our goal is to pique their curiosity and their interest in hearing the rest of the story. And so that's my workaround for that situation, where you have many executives who are, very limited on time and probably have been constantly bombarded with data. And if we can share a data trailer with them and it piques their interest, then we get their permission. Now they're saying, okay, this is worth another 10 minutes, 20 minutes of my time to hear the rest of the story. And then we can tell them the rest of the story as we originally envisioned.
Right.
But that's kind of what to answer your question, that's what I wanted to share.
And that tension you mentioned in the book that sort of acts as an amplifier to attention and curiosity, the thing you just mentioned before, right? We thought there wasn't a market opportunity there, but now we start thinking that there is. Is that an example of establishing a bit of tension and piquing that curiosity, or like how would you actually do it?
So the tension, the curiosity grows as we start with. It starts right from that baseline where we say, here's kind of how status quo is, right? So this is all stuff that they know. This is stuff they're comfortable with. But then we share that hook, right? And we say, but something happened on this day. This metric went down or this metric went up. That's the first piece of tension. They're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Why did that go up? Why did that go down? I don't understand. And then we start to unpack it, right? So we start to say, well, the first thing we looked at were the countries. And we did an analysis of the countries. We found this region right here had a higher concentration of blah, blah, blah. And then we start to unpack it and we go there. And so they're following us along on this journey. We're holding their hand. And the cool thing about data storytelling is obviously our goal is to drive action. But even if we don't drive action, they're still learning something about the business. Our audience is learning about the business. That could be, insights into the customer. That could be insights into our products. That could be insights into our markets, our competitors. They're learning. And even if they don't apply it and take an action on whatever insight that we're sharing, they're still growing and learning. And so, through this tension, we build up to the aha moment, which is the big, that's the climax. That's everything. But it's a journey that we're taking them on. I like to compare data storytelling to being a tour guide. And one of the experiences that I had many years ago, my wife and I, before COVID, when you could actually travel places. And actually I went to, my wife had always wanted to go to Italy and always wanted to see, we went to the Amalfi Coast.
Beautiful.
And yeah, beautiful. And part of that, with the tour guide, we had arranged to see Pompeii. And when we got to Pompeii, we had a tour guide, and he was an archaeology student at the local Naples University. And so we only had a very limited window of time to go through that site. And I don't know if you've ever been to Pompeii, but it's, you could spend a day or more there just seeing everything. But we didn't have a day. We had like 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and that's it. And so he basically tailored our experience to what we could see in the time that we had. He learned about us as, what we wanted to see, and then he took us to the place. Now, I see that the same way with the data storyteller. What we're doing is we know all the data. We know everything in and out. But as we understand who the audience is, we then guide them through that maze of data, and we pick out and choose what we share with them and do so in a way that's going to be maximum benefit for that audience. And so that's kind of what I like to think of data storytelling. You're the guide, you're the tour guide through your analysis and helping them to come away with a tangible insight and action that they can take after you've taken them on that tour. One of the challenges that you can run into with a data scientist or with an analyst is what I call as the analyst journey, where it's like, oh, first I looked at this, and then I looked at this, and then I ran, I did some regression analysis here, and that didn't turn up anything. No, that's not what I'm talking about. This is geared towards the audience. What do they want to see? And how can I take them through meaningful data that's going to be beneficial to them, not recount the steps that I took in the analysis. That's not storytelling in my mind.